the development of the VR, the technology itself, it's really fast. It's like every month almost, or every quarter, let's say, there's something new, some innovation. That was the reason why I started to let's say track the development of the VR, and I'm still wondering where there's going to be the breaking point, because it feels like there are so many new projects, and every one of them is better and better, and different angle and different use or something like that. So when do you expect to be a next smartphone, because that's what I expect, that someday we're going to use VR as a smartphone now.
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of separate, and so it's really AR that'll be your next computing device.
Yeah.
And then VR will be a destination, right? So you're going in to learn something, do something, see something, experience something. But it is that you're absolutely right. I mean, it's iterating so quickly, but even though this is a little bit counterintuitive, that's part of the adoption issue, because you remember the early days of the smartphones, we didn't buy a new smartphone every single year because they were expensive, and we were really sort of waiting for them to be ready for prime time. And I think that's part of why the adoption is so slow. They're still very cumbersome. It's hard to be in VR for a long period of time. The headsets are a little bit heavy, but we're getting there. And Magic Leap came out with very, very mixed reviews, and I was disheartened by that, because I understand that it wasn't what people expected, but I think a large part of that is that people are mad that they've taken in $2.4 billion, so they wanted something bigger and badder. But as a 1.0 version, it could be better, but they need to get it in the hands of developers so that they can understand what are developers looking for, what are the challenges for building on this kind of device. There's a lot. It's hard to do what they're doing because it has to have total contextual relevance. So we're getting there, but it's a little bit slow.
But aren't we faster than the development itself? Because from my point of view, and I'm not a specialist for VR, but when you were talking about the AR as a next step, nowadays you can see VR everywhere, but almost no AR projects. So why are we skipping the next step, like the AR?
It's interesting.
Or are we? Or is it just my feeling? Like,
no, I think, and it's interesting that you say that, because the irony is that AR devices are in everybody's hands already, and even though Lowe's and Amazon have built some products where you can sort of try on, or you can scan your room and you can drop furniture in, and those are all really valid use cases, but nothing except for Pokemon Go that has captured the hearts and minds of the public. And so until we have that really strong blend of content that has utility and fun and entertainment, until we have enough of that content, I think we'll see that AR adoption will be slow. But when it comes, it's going to come very quickly.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned Pokemon Go, because it was really a phenomenon. But it's still like 2 years ago, and it seems that like the next step will be another game, and then another step, and there's nothing there. So we're still at the beginning. Like, we need a few years to adapt to AR, and then we have like maybe tens of years like to adapt to a VR. Reality.
Well, I don't think it's quite that long. I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, there's so much that also has to happen. 5G really needs to roll out.
Yep.
We need the headsets to become lighter and untethered. So, Santa Cruz from Oculus will be out early next year. Vive has, their Vive Focus, which is out. It's still 3DoF controllers, but I'm sure the next version will be 6DoF. So it's again, I think we have a very high expectation, because now we've had some really good technology in our hands for a long time as consumers. So we're expecting it to be the iPhone or the Google Pixel or the Samsung, and it's not quite there yet. And the cell phone evolved over a decade, really, actually more than that, 2 decades almost.
funny thing is, I cannot say like what my first smartphone looked like and what could it do. So.
Do you remember the flip phone? I mean,
Yeah,
by
yeah, I do.
Motorola, and that
was
was like the coolest thing ever. And then having to text, where you'd have to like press 3 times. It was very. It was like.
I had a skill. I remembered the number of. Like the
yeah,
push
like,
you had to do, so
C3,
that's C3.
yes, yeah,
So.
exactly. But we sort of taught ourselves to be proficient at it because texting was such a new and exciting form of communication. So that was actually both utility and entertainment because it was fun, but it was valuable to us to be able to actually like, God, I don't have to call somebody and have the call drop. I can get this message across and and they'll respond right away. And it was kind of exciting. Like you'd wait to hear that little bloop, when it jumped in your inbox. That was fun.
Yeah, because when we were talking about the VR conference call, and we just like said that
which is a secret.
It's a secret. It's not happening. It's not happening. But probably when we air the interview, it's going to be out there.
Yes, exactly.
We were talking about that the technology is here, but it's not as good as it might be and as it should be for this kind of stuff. So that's why I'm thinking that maybe we are running a little bit too fast for it. Like that's we are skipping too much in the future.
I think you're right, and it's interesting because I watched a little bit of your last interview, and I know you've been talking to everybody here. And what's really great about this conference is that it's looking at all of technologies, and that's part of the problem. How can everyone stay on top of all of these technologies that are coming, and they're all moving so quickly, and they're all moving at their own pace, and it's. All of it, I think what'll happen is they'll all sort of evolve together, and then we'll start to see solutions that incorporate blockchain and AI and machine learning and nanotechnology. But again, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6 years before we really start to see solutions out there.
Yeah. What's the best use of VR you've seen or tried so far?
Gosh,
it's a tricky question. I know,
it's hard because they're in every single vertical from a B2B enterprise standpoint. It has value actually in an end-to-end way. So I don't really look at VR solving individual problems. I look at it as fundamentally changing the way we work, changing the way we learn, changing the way we collaborate. And that, to me, is the future, and that's the exciting thing about the technology. There's so many great solutions out there, and I found even in healthcare, being able to help people change behaviors or help them better themselves or overcome fears or addictions. I mean, that has real value. Or educating kids and being able to teach them math so that they feel good about themselves. I didn't realize this when I started researching. I did some research on education, and math phobia is a thing. I had no idea, but a lot of students remember, in fact, a high percentage, and I think it's somewhere near 70%, actually remember math as being traumatic.
Okay.
And that's a we can change that in VR because we can teach math concepts in so many different ways that if one way doesn't work for one student, then they can go into VR and they can learn particularly physics and geometry and any kind of spatial mathematics you're learning. And it really changes their whole experience because they get to have that aha moment instead of being fearful of math for the rest of their lives.
But as I see, there's a little catch right now, and I know we're not talking about like the situation right now, but nowadays the technology is still quite expensive. So probably the next step would be to get it to more common, let's say, to lower the price with probably more like the bigger volume of VR glasses produced and so on. So probably that's also the part of the problem that they are not like mass production of VR glasses.
And the computing power is incredibly high. I was talking to Frank Soki of Intel, And, we were talking about this very problem, and he said, well, we're Intel. We make things smaller. That's what we do. And that's part of what it's going to take, just making the compute power much, much higher and making the power consumption less, making the form factor smaller. But, there have been the leaks of the Apple glasses, which we've seen. I really think that the first generation hybrid AR VR glasses will look something like that, where you'll have regular glasses that'll be AR capability, and then you'll have a hood that'll put you into full VR. And again, we won't be focused on which reality we're in. It'll really be about the experience, and that's really the goal.
I've heard an expression, a mixed reality, like the real one. That's a strange thing to say.
The real reality.
And the augmented one and the virtual one. So that's probably the future, like our goal to have 3 different realities together.
Well, I think we won't focus on what's real and what's digital. It'll be the experience, the utility, the entertainment, the engagement. And again, if you think about the phones, you could argue that they're antisocial, but in a weird way, we are so much more connected to everybody as a result of those phones that we wouldn't necessarily be, through Facebook, through Instagram, through Twitter, and social media in general. And I think that that's the burden that VR has, is right now it's very solitary, but being able to kind of very seamlessly shift from an AR field of view to a VR field of view, and then have other people with you, that is also the key, because we're social creatures by nature.